Well, hello, everybody. Megan, can you hear me okay? Great, thanks so much. It is truly an honor to be here tonight because I was an Etna resident for the first 20 years of my life. And then I came back a few years after I moved out of Etna to teach in the Shaler Area School District. So I think I've put in 35 years of my life in the Etna community, and I'm very passionate about the work that you're doing. And this just all really hit home whenever I saw what happened and whenever I saw the ability to respond. A couple things. Number one, I want everyone to just take a breath and pause. We're not going to solve anti-Semitism tonight. It's not going to happen. It's okay. We're playing the long game. We're planting the seed. We're laying the foundation for acting at our level to respond to anti-Semitism in our community. Anti-Semitism itself is over 2,500 years old, and we could talk for hours about the long and complicated history and the many forms it takes. But as far as what we're talking about tonight, we are showing that something bad can transform into something good, as we just heard about the post-traumatic growth. A couple other things to keep in mind. I find it interesting that what I'm going to talk about for the next 15, 20 minutes and then bring students in to talk about is both the most understood item on the survey and the least understood item on the survey. Everyone felt the most comfortable with equity, inclusion, and belonging, and the least comfortable with genocide and human rights education. And those are the two things that I'm going to be talking about. So I hope my goal is to kind of move everybody forward together. I am going to share my screen so that you can see some visuals from myself and from the state of Pennsylvania. And Megan, I'm looking at you again. Can you see my screen all right? Fantastic. As I said, I was a resident of Etna. I am currently wearing a couple of different hats. Number one, I'm a teacher at the Shaler Area High School. I've taught for the last many years a class on multicultural studies, on multiculturalism, human rights, and genocide, and a class called the Holocaust: Background, Tragedy, and Aftermath. And I say this to let you know that we do have electives for students to take at the high school level that do teach them about things like equity, inclusion, belonging, Holocaust, genocide, human rights, education, remembrance, advocacy, all those different things. So I think it's my job to really connect everyone, plug everyone into the state of Holocaust education. A little bit of background: it's different in every state. It's not mandated in every state. It's not mandated in Pennsylvania, in the state that we're in right now. So Holocaust education takes many different forms. I'm also the director of the Light Education Initiative, something that I created whenever I noticed that the days of bringing a Holocaust survivor in to teach the Holocaust are almost over. There are very few Holocaust survivors that are around and healthy enough to come into classrooms to teach this content to the students. So what I developed was a program to bring leadership through innovation in genocide and human rights teaching, inspired by the Holocaust. That's what LIGHT is. It's an acronym that stands for Leadership Through Innovation in Genocide and Human Rights Teaching. And it has become the flagship educational outreach program of the Holocaust Center of Pittsburgh. Currently, we have 13 school districts in 5 counties across 52 municipalities with a max reach of over 10,000 students. We have put a pause on adding new schools just because the capacity has really gone. We realize that there's a lot of work to be done, going deeper, not broader, before we expand. And I do want to say that it started in Shaler area, and now it's expanding across the region, and it's something that we can be proud of. And it started with, I'm going to say it many times, an Etna resident. So Etna really is connected deeply in all of this content. The approach we take always through LIGHT is to inspire, prepare, and empower. And that's what I'm going to do tonight with you. I'm going to try to inspire you, prepare you, and empower you. First, inspire you. What is LIGHT? It's many things. And for us, it's a tool that we can use to try to counter anti-Semitism in our community, in our school district. It is 4 things, really. It's a movement to transform remembrance into action for all victims of identity-based violence and discrimination. What we do is we acknowledge that we can't prevent the Holocaust. It is a historic event. What we can do is learn the lessons of the Holocaust and apply them today to make sure that we are preventing all forms of identity-based violence and discrimination. Light is also a place, it's a space, it's a safe space and a brave space, sort of like what we've created today, where people feel comfortable and equipped to have conversations like this. In the Shaler Area High School, it is a physical space, and it is being created as physical spaces in schools across the region. It's also a network of school districts, of universities, nonprofits, libraries, small businesses, students, and community members like us right now. And lastly, it is an opportunity for us to learn together, to grow together, to share moments of inspiration, preparation, and empowerment together. Next is a question: how in the world does this program help Etna to counter anti-Semitism and hate speech? And the answer is that it is just one tool in the co-design toolkit. And I'll talk about co-design in just a second here. But it's a toolkit of co-design opportunities. And that's really what I want to stress here. Opportunities designed to help individual groups like the ones on this call more efficiently achieve collective goals. So we look at this call tonight and, scroll through all the little windows, and you can see there are many what we call unlikely allies. People that, if it weren't for the group that organized this tonight, probably wouldn't be in the same space at the same time working on these, this issue. So what we are engaging in right now is a co-design opportunity, and that's what Light really seeks to do. So tonight, what I'm going to introduce you to is how the PA Department of Education has really created a framework and a vocabulary for us to do this work together. And I'm going to teach you what schools are doing K through 12 across Pennsylvania. So now we move to the next stage, the preparation phase. And just to give you a brief overview, co-design is this concept that's collaborative, participatory, and it's a method for designing systems, programs, and practices in which people like us are treated as equal collaborators in the design process. So instead of us dumping a program on Etna, Etna with community members develops the program that works best for the environment that we're in to respond best to the situations that we have in front of us. So every community member holds a stake in this process. And the goal is to make sure everybody who will be using or participating in the final product has an equal say in its development. So back to the basics, we are at the start of a very long journey. But what's really cool is that Etna has been engaged in co-design for years. I can say that because I lived in Etna for a really long time. And nothing happens in Etna in a bubble, in a silo. Everyone's constantly, for better or worse, in each other's business, helping each other out, lending a hand. And sometimes it's a little crazy, but it's always for the good of the community. So in collaboration with the Shaler Area School District, that's SASD, Light is seeking to support and incentivize co-design projects like this. So this is only the beginning. And one of my favorite quotes about beginnings is that a beginning is the time for taking the most delicate care that the balances are correct. And that is exactly what Etna is doing. Taking the time, taking the care to make sure that these balances are correct. And this is really equity work. In the Shaler Area High School, we've been doing work around heritage months and observances. We've been doing work with community museums. The students are getting out there into the community. They're taking part in creating tools for the community and the school to use. This is countering what we call disposable education. Instead of students putting time and energy into things we throw away, we're trying to direct them into programs like the one that we're taking part in right now for Etna. The energy it creates, it doesn't just get thrown in a garbage can or get filed in a cabinet. What I'm going to do right now is prepare you a little bit by introducing you to the Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging Practices Hub through the Pennsylvania Department of Education's website and program. So if you ever go to the Pennsylvania Department of Education website, you'll notice that under Safe Schools, there's something called Equity and Inclusion, and a simple statement: to do their best, students must feel safe at school. And I was on a call with Etna representatives last week, and someone said to really do their best, community members have to feel safe in the community. And it's the same for our younger community members who are in schools. For them to do their best, they have to feel safe. And a healthy and safe environment can help students thrive. And every student, regardless of race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, gender identity, or expression should be provided the opportunity to learn, free from discrimination, fear, or harassment. And what we saw in our community with the flag, with the flag, was students being afraid. Young people walking to the bus stop, seeing something that brought fear into their minds. And I say this as someone whose bus stop was just down the street from the house that currently has that swastika flag. So this really hits home for me. The equity, inclusion, and belonging framework is, it's meant to be pretty simple. And I've heard this talked about a lot today, so I'll move through it quickly. Equity is defined as everybody having access to the resources and rigor they need at the right moment in their education across race, gender, ethnicity, language, disability, religion, sexual orientation, gender identity, family background, and or family income. And I found a nice picture to just illustrate this. You see the person on the left needs a little bit of help. You see the person in the middle doesn't really need anything. And you see the person on the right needs a lot of help. This is the difference between equity and equality. If this were equality, everyone would have the same exact thing and it would still not be equitable. Equity is people getting what they need at the right time so that everyone can have a level playing field. Inclusion, this is another thing that our K through 12 students are encouraged to get behind, learn about, experience, practice, is defined as engagement within a community where the equal worth and inherent dignity of each person is honored. And an inclusive community like Etna promotes and sustains a sense of belonging. I saw two beautiful examples of this in creating this presentation. Number one is a quote: "Diversity is being invited to the party, inclusion is being asked to dance." And you can see the puzzle pieces of diversity and inclusion is all of them put together. And lastly, belonging is defined as experiencing appreciation, validation, acceptance, and fair treatment within an environment. And the example of belonging has already been created and we're living it right now and moving through it together. Equity, inclusion, and belonging has 6 pillars. We are currently in the family community engagement pillar, meaning what we are doing is a crucial pillar of the education of all of the children in Shaler Area School District, specifically on this call, the children of Etna. They need us to be part of this. So we have to ask ourselves, what is the role of the educational community beyond the school in driving educational equity efforts? And I think one of the answers to that questions is right now in this meeting. And then the other pillars, as you can see, I'm not going to go into in detail, but general equity practices, self-awareness, which I'm sure we've all been faced with in the last couple months with this flag, data practices, academic equity, and disciplinary equity. There are also 3 spheres to equity and inclusion and belonging. We are in the district and school sphere, asking ourselves, in what way can our school district become more equitable across the systems? And then once we get into that, we can go into classroom and individual. So as you can see here, we are specifically focused tonight on religious identity, but equity, inclusion, and belonging stresses all of these different things: gender and gender identity, disability or ability, LGBTQIA+, racial and ethnic identity, religious identity, and immigrant and refugee students. So this is how all of this really fits together, and this work really belongs in the same discussion. Next up, what are some potential misconceptions? I'm not going to read them all now. You've heard them before. And what I'll tell you is, before I show you the misconceptions, I'll tell you that to really dive into them, you can go on the Pennsylvania Department of Education's website, the Equitable Practices Hub, and I'm sure the link will be shared with you after this presentation. And of course, some of the potential misconceptions are things, are buzzwords like critical race theory. And if you really read into them, you can see that equity is, critical race theory is not something that's taught anywhere in any public school in Pennsylvania, but it is something that certain people have got behind to try to derail the efforts of communities to be more equitable. And it's no surprise the individuals that really get behind these types of movements is, frankly, they haven't necessarily had the best education in empathy and kindness and love and tolerance, because if they did, they would be focused on equity, inclusion, and belonging, and not focused on derailing education surrounding Holocaust, genocide, and human rights. They're here. I'll share them with you. I'm not going to read them all to you now. But basically, if you say things like, I don't know what you mean by whatever you're saying, what we are focused on in Etna is equity, inclusion, and belonging. That is what we are focused on. Lastly, just some basic talking points, 3 of them. Countering anti-Semitism in Etna, this meeting, and Etna is for Everyone, the campaign, are grassroots movements sparked and sustained by the community of Etna. Second point, the Pennsylvania Department of Education and their equity, inclusion, and belonging hub and program provides us the framework necessary for sustained and embedded countering anti-Semitism advocacy work, especially among young people. So what PDE does is it really gives us that strong foundation to continue to do this work in and out of schools. And lastly, what my program does as the flagship educational outreach program of the Holocaust Center of Pittsburgh is to give Etna residents support through this co-design practices, connecting your efforts to the students of Shaler area through PDE, the Pennsylvania Department of Education's framework. So now I'm going to move on to the basic question of what can you do? Number 1, you can remain informed by the Etna Community Organization through meetings like this, flyers that you find throughout the community, throughout local businesses, and emails with specific action items. For example, the yard signs. It's a really great way to take action. Number 2, you can follow the Light and the Holocaust Center of Pittsburgh on social media. On Instagram, you can see it's @light_INIT and @HCPGH, or visit the websites. And there's constantly programs and opportunities. New programs all the time. The Holocaust Center never stops. Light never stops. So you can keep up to date on what we're doing using those 3 things. But lastly, it's very simple. This whole presentation boils down to 1 sentence. You can counter ignorance and hate speech with education and kindness. Super simple. You are all more educated tonight now than you were an hour and a half ago. So what you can do is share what you learned with other people and counter hate with kindness and love. And my goodness, we have grown up in the community that produced the individual who taught the world this. There are 3 ways to ultimate success, Mr. Rogers. The first way is to be kind. The second way is to be kind. And the third way is to be kind. It's really simple. So whenever you think about what am I going to do about that swastika flag? What am I going to do about contemporary anti-Semitism, about anti-Semitism around the United States? You work at your level and do what you can. And that is to educate people and to be kind to one another. We are now going to move on to the second phase of this talk, which is going to invite students in. And I see some students on the call right now. But what we do basically, the approach that we take, and I know that you are taking, whether you know it or not, is this human-centered design approach of identifying the roses or the successes that you already have in your community, the thorns, which are the challenges or the obstacles, and the buds, which are the potential or the opportunity. So to be more specific here, one of the roses that we have already identified is that Etna is for Everyone exists as a beautiful campaign, has for years. There are signs, there are buttons, there are flyers, there are groups of people who meet. So already that's something that we should celebrate as a success. It's a lot more than a lot of communities have. Etna is really at the vanguard, the forefront of countering anti-Semitism through community action. Second, you look at the thorns, and we're not focused on that tonight. We know what the challenges are. You heard them before I came on the call and unmuted. You know that one of the challenges is the flag. Again, but we're not going to focus on that right now. What we are going to put our energy into are the buds. That is the potential and the opportunities. And we're going to think about how we can translate those opportunities or the potential into action items for the rest of this school year, because my work focuses on young people, and once June hits, they're gone. And then we think about the action items for next school year. And we can really kick off August, September, October, November, December, leading into the next calendar year. So what I want you thinking about as you hear things from students in just a moment is, what are the students sharing that you would like to be a part of? What are the students doing in the high school that you are inspired by? Maybe it will be a call to action for you to create something, or if you own a local business, or if you work in Etna, or wherever you are, maybe it'll make you think about how you can approach countering anti-Semitism a little bit differently, and countering all forms of identity-based discrimination a little bit differently. So what I'm going to ask students to do for this student voice and action component is to share the potential, the opportunities for future engagement and success. If we were in person, we'd be doing activities and making buttons and all sorts of stuff like that. But right now, since we're just on the call, we have to focus on what we can do, and we can talk to one another. So I know that there are at least a few students, Cassidy, Laffey, Flannery Loudon, Maeve, Snyder, Maggie, Rhea. So if any of those students are on the call, please, now is the time for you to unmute and share with everybody some of the things that we are doing in Shaler Area High School and beyond. And Megan, I can help you facilitate this if you need me to.
I guess I'll go first. Yeah, can everyone hear me all right? I just want to make sure everyone can hear me. Okay. Hi, I'm Maeve Snyder. I'm a senior at Shaler Area High School. I think a lot of my peers are also on here that are also seniors. I'm also the president of the Gay Straight Alliance at the high school. And I guess my whole message here was that, like, I'm kind of in disbelief about how normalized acts of hatred are becoming, because they happen so often. As a bisexual woman, I've seen discrimination firsthand. When the Tree of Life synagogue shooting happened, I was only a few blocks away. I was in Squirrel Hill, and I wasn't very far away at all. I've witnessed LGBTQ plus and racial-based violence firsthand by seeing other people go through it. However, I think with nearly 90 people in this meeting, including local leaders, who I'm very thankful are here, it is clear that people are being inspired to make a change. So hopefully when I leave this district and go to college and come back to become a teacher, I can say that I have chosen a safe place and a loving place to raise my future children. And I hope that will happen thanks to the dedication of every one of you who took your time to be here this evening. And I would just love to thank you guys for being so passionate about this, and trying to help us make Shaler, and not only Shaler, but Pittsburgh, a better place.
Dave, thank you so much for sharing. Before you sign off here, can you please let people know how they can find out more about the Gay Straight Alliance that we have in Shaler Area High School?
Yes, so we have a Instagram page, and sorry, I have to look at it now. It's just GSA_Shaler. And I help Miss Pikarski run, Kim Pikarski, run GSA, and we do a lot of fun activities. So if you ever want to, take a look at the Instagram page, we have all of our upcoming events and everything that we're doing on there. And if you'd like to support us or join us in any way, that'd be awesome.
Thank you so much for sharing, Maeve. So very proud of you and your efforts. Other Shaler area students that I spoke with who are on this call.
Hi, my name is Cassidy. I'm a senior at Shaler. Sorry, I'm in my car right now. I'm currently at Dan's. I had to step out for a minute to talk with you guys. I think this is just so important, so I'm happy to do it. But again, sorry that I'm in my car. Anyways, I think that my biggest thing is whenever I think about how we as a community can make a difference, I think the number one thing, as Mr. Haberman said, is to be educated, but it's also to openly show our support. Now, I think that it's really important to never hate anyone for anything or ever show the acts of hatred that people are showing other people. So, for example, this man with the flag, I think that it's important for us not to just go straight to yelling at him and hating him. And I think it's more important to educate ourselves and people like him, and also show that we stand with the people who are being targeted. For example, with Light, I know that we have these pins, and I keep a lot of pins that represent things that are important to me on my book bag. So when I'm walking in the hallway, people can see that I'm openly supporting them and things like that. I think that also like businesses can hang flags and can show their support with signs. And I think it's just important at times like this to be so supportive of each other to the point where the people who aren't feel outnumbered and learn to educate themselves and make that change. Thank you guys.
Thank you so much for sharing, Cassidy. Cassidy is another senior at Shaler Area High School. And I think what point I agree is really important. It's just these simple acts of kindness and simple demonstrations of solidarity, and what we call and talk about with the students call allyship. So asking yourself, what have you been afforded that other people haven't, and how can you use that to help lift up other people that may not have the voice or the opportunity that you have? So asking yourself, how can you be a better ally for all these different groups of people? Cassidy, thank you so much for sharing and joining us from your car. Anyone else who joined the call tonight as a Shaler area student who wants to share some of the things that Shaler Area High School or Shaler Area School District is doing?
Yeah, hi. So my name's Maggie. I'm another senior at Shaler, and I'm a light ambassador. Maeve and Cassidy are too. So we work with Mr. Haberman. We do a lot of events with light. And I just wanted to say, because I thought it was interesting, a lot of people saying they didn't really know what was going on with Holocaust and genocide education in school. Like, as a senior, I've just gone up through all of the years of education at Shaler, and I have not taken Mr. Haberman's multicultural studies class or the Holocaust class that are specifically for that kind of teaching, like completely devoted to those subjects. But I have taken European history, I've taken American history, and I think that Shaler is definitely laying a foundation, teaching us this is what happened in the Holocaust. This was genocide. This is not okay. And I think that Shaler is really trying and is very open to improving that education and making sure that students know that this is not okay and that we need to be a loving community for everyone and continue to be more educated and be more loving. And I think that, like me as a Shaler student, Maeve, Cassidy, the other light ambassadors, I would say the majority of students at Shaler want to make positive change and want to be a loving and inclusive place where people in Shaler feel safe coming to school and they feel like they can learn and grow. And so I think that Shaler students are with Etna in this, and we just want to help out any way that we can.
Thank you so much for sharing, Maggie. And all the students who have shared tonight I could go on and on about the work that they've done. Last year during COVID, Maggie edited a panel discussion that was hosted by students with African-American members of our community talking about what it's like to be Black in Shaler. And this is not an easy conversation to have, but our students are really diving headfirst into this difficult content, having difficult conversations that are important, all in an effort to leave our community better than we found it. I think that might be it for the students that are on the call, unless somebody else is on the call that I missed. So Megan, it is 8:14. I think we're right on schedule. Again, if anyone's ever curious about what's going on in Shaler, you can check the school district website, you can check the Light Initiative website, or I'm going to drop my email in the chat right now if anyone wants to email me. So thank you again for letting me share all this information with you and share the stories of students. And students, thank you so much for taking the time to come tonight.